And we're live with Duncan Davidson. Duncan is an entertaining guy. I had him answer a couple of questions prior to this pod. And yeah, he's very, how do you say, succinct and nonsense type of guy. He's the co founder of Bullpen Capital. It's in brief, two bubble era IPOs. I think you were a pitch person for that. And then you learned firsthand that venture capital is a cyclical business. So, Duncan, can you start telling a bit more about who you are, why you are that way, and what you're up to nowadays?
Well, first of all, the core rule of venture capital is VCs only make money when markets are irrational. And that seems to defeat people's minds, but that's how it works. You make all the money in a few brief periods of craziness in the market. So I started off, I did 4 startups. My first one went public. Well, let me put it this way. This is how crazy it used to be. I started working on 94, and in 96, some change in the law let me actually restart it. And I had 3 people at Intel and myself put up 50 grand collectively, so 12.5 each. About 4 months later, this is October 96, we raised about $1 million from an angel. About 4 or 5 months later, 10 million from VCs. Okay. 2 years later, October 98, 2 years after putting in 12.5, we went public. And a year and a half after that, the peak of the bubble, February 2000, it's worth $9 billion. What's that? $9 billion.
Holy shit.
No, that wasn't the crazy part. I didn't pitch that one. I went to chairman, then I went to another company that needed some help. And the CEO was a brilliant, deep thinker who took 20 minutes to say what you couldn't spend more than 20 seconds on trying to raise money. So I ended up pitching that company called Intertrust. And Intertrust goes public in October 99 at the peak of the craziness. And it took me a lot of work to get this thing in front of the right bankers and get it going public, and obstacles all along the way. And so perseverance is a good talent sometimes.
Right.
But I
And
did the pitch. And we had 600K of trailing revenue. We go out, and 3 weeks after we go out, we're worth about 4 billion. And at the peak in February, we were worth $8 billion.
that's insane.
It is.
Was that luck? And did you get an exit out of that one, or
Well,
did
I
it
got
just
money out
wasn't
of
work?
both, but the first one, since I no longer was a senior exec, didn't get my hands tied the way they tie up executives. I could just sell the stock. The second one, every time we were in a trading window to sell stock, we had something crazy in mind, so I didn't get to sell right away.
Right.
Uh, but let me put the best part of this, the best part of this whole experience, Intertrust experience. Why did it go so crazy? I mean, it's one of these puzzles. It's a great story. We sold the story really well. We were 13 times oversubscribed at the IPO, which is pretty good. And we had great prospects going forward, but the market took off ahead of us. I mean, I don't know what I could do with a company that got to like 4 billion in 3 weeks after going public and had no real earnings to report in the next quarterly earnings report. A lot of hand waving. That was the crazy part of this.
So yeah, how do you exit at that point, and why is the market going crazy over that? Were they misunderstanding something, or
No, the story was a very good story. The potential was very high. Seriously, the company went on. It went on to get bought by Sony and Philips, and it delivered over $1.5 billion of revenue for them in pretty short order. So it had a great story. Just the story took a little bit of time to get going.
right?
That's the
And
problem.
right now, are we in some sort of bubble? Because the dot-com boom and bust is like nothing I've ever seen before. Can't compare it to 2008 crisis. Can't compare it to COVID. How do you identify that something is bubbly? Like, for example, I think the real estate market's a bubble, but it's a very long bubble, and I'm not sure when that one's going to burst. And if it does, I think the whole market will fall on its ass in a couple of decades. But how do you identify a bubble, and how do you identify when to actually exit it at the right time?
Well, this is probably the second secret of venture capital, which is these tech booms are endogenous. They come out of the industry itself. They're not due to monetary policy, crazy financial conditions. They're not exogenous like the real estate bubble. Case in point, I started off in the PC bubble. So a microprocessor gets perfected. A bunch of PCs get formed. Apple goes public in 1980. Steve Jobs, younger than Zuckerberg, is worth more in today's money when it goes public. There was a really huge set of IPOs in 1983. That was not equaled in the recent COVID craziness. It was only exceeded by what happened in .com. But that whole era was a time of 14% interest rates, double dip recession. It was bad macroeconomics, and yet the tech boom surged. It was crazy. And then, go
Do you
ahead. You're
feel
about to ask me a
do you feel
question.
that like right now AI is a bubble, or it's real value, and it's something that won't, because a lot of people say AIs are less invention, right? And maybe it is. But on the other hand, we could hit data or GPU limits and we wouldn't achieve AGI, right? And OpenAI, arguably the most valuable company in the world, is its full quest about reaching AGI, right? So would you qualify that as a bubble, an AI
Well, I'm
bubble?
trying to make a distinction. A tech boom looks like a bubble, but it's based upon reality. A bubble like tulip bulbs is based on financial bullshit. Big difference. The COVID thing was not a tech boom. It wasn't like the .com thing. It wasn't like the PC thing. It was based on we were giving out trillions of dollars for free. That was a pure financial crazy bubble. And that bubble, I don't like bubbles, but I do love booms.
And
Because
that bubble snapped recently, right? Like we're
yeah,
seeing US is sort of in a recession, and then came in the tariffs. I think that accentuated that, or whatever that word is. What do you think about this?
well, I mean, look, we can get into the details. The GDP went negative in Q1. No surprise. It's because people were front running the tariffs and buying a lot of imports, and imports decrease gross domestic product. It lowers GDP because it's domestic production. But that's noise. That's noise. What's going on is the microprocessor drove this great PC bubble. Then the internet drove the .com bubble. Then the what I find most interesting is that iPhone, this wonderful computer in your pocket, it drove another period that should have had a tech boom and didn't. A lot of companies formed, a lot of value formed, things like Uber got out, but it did not, you didn't see the type of spike in IPOs that we had seen in the past. So now we're in the fourth one of these in my life, which is the AI thing. There's no question AI is the next defining technology. And there's no question it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger before it sort of saturates.
Right.
Uh, so it should end up in the type of boom that has lots of IPOs, excitement, craziness, and stupid companies being worth $8 billion, right? It should do that. But because the iPhone period didn't, I'm actually raising a big question mark. So, Charles, I don't know if you know this. After the .com bubble, in our great wisdom, we killed the small IPO. So, look, think about my first IPO. We seed funded, angel funded with founders, and 2 years later, it's public. Think about that. Okay. Back then, that's what happened. Amazon gets formed, it goes public almost immediately. It's worth 400 million in its public offering. If you had put 10 grand in that and held it, you're worth, I don't know, 10 million today or some crazy number. You could get rich playing IPOs back in the 80s and 90s. And they took them out really fast. But after 2000, they killed off the small IPO. There's no small IPOs anymore. Facebook goes public, worth 100 billion. The normal retail investor trying to buy in at 400 million type of value couldn't play. And I think it's that change, killing off the small, quick VC backed IPO, that meant that we didn't have a bubble that we expected in 2015, 16. It's like the dog that didn't bark is this bubble that didn't happen. So
Right. But why do you say that tariffs are noise if short term it almost decimated the economy, and long term it might be one of the greatest driver from the US?
you want to talk tariffs? Well, look, I think it all came down to when they first came out, it was, Liberation Day was kind of obliteration day, according to somebody. But it's all a question of whether they're a negotiating ploy or they're real. And very quickly after Obliteration Day, we got all the stories out, mostly by our wonderful Treasury Secretary, that it's a negotiating ploy. Got to cut a bunch of deals. Even with China, we'll cut a deal. So in that sense, the tariff may end up 10%-ish, which is higher than it used to be, but we're going to try to whack all the other countries down so it's a more balanced, fair trading system. So I would just say this: everybody should just sit back. I know Canada had their election and Australia's about to, and they're all voting as if they're Americans, pro or con Trump. I think everybody just sits back and waits. You wait a few more months and see how the deals come out and see how this settles down before drawing any judgment.
Right. I think they vote that way because a very strong part of the economy is linked to the US, like 25, if not 35% of GDP.
Oh my God. You know, Carney, who's not really Canadian, he's European. He was head of the Bank of England. He hasn't been in Canada for a long time. He wasn't even an MP. He wasn't a member of parliament. They just made him prime minister. Carney is a very interesting guy whose brothers are also a part of this global world of being involved in all these projects and skimming money out and all that. So Carney saying to the US, we're going to disengage our economy from your economy, is like pointing a gun at your head and saying, pull the trigger. It's suicide for Canada to do that. They cannot do that. The two economies are way too entwined.
Right. Well, it's like populism fighting populism, right? Like when you have a guy like Trump, I think you need, well, people want fire to be fought with fire, right? Like humans are that way, and that's who they're going to elect. So I think this guy, he speaks a lot of rhetoric, but yeah, maybe in the back end, he could do something more reasonable. I think Trump, on the other hand, is just pure fire on the front end and on the back end.
You don't know what Trump's got to do. It's one of his strengths and weaknesses. But yes, Carney, I'm sure, is going to negotiate a deal to try to work things out with the U.S. because he's a very smart man and he knows his rhetoric is suicidal. So he's not going to follow his rhetoric.
Yeah, yeah. I think just seeking to please people, right? And populations, as you know, like the 80%, they just want entertainment, right? They just want to watch the fight in the Gladiator Coliseum and be entertained more than they want progress if they really sit down with what they want. And that's a big problem that we can keep for another podcast. But I'm just curious, you had this big exit. After that, you started Bullpen Cap eventually, and you invested in all these companies, most of which I wouldn't describe as obscure, but most of which I don't know about. And in your answer, in one of my emails, you said that most VCs need to chase the hot deals and win the beauty contest, right? Like, what's your investment thesis? Why don't you chase like the big headline type of companies, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, etc.?
Well, it's because we fashioned ourselves as a contrarian fund, which is why I put in there Peter Thiel is one of the people I like the most. But he actually spoke at one of our conferences. It was a great moment. Somebody asked him, "Are you John Galt?" And his answer was, "I don't read," which is a John Galt answer. But of course, Peter actually reads a lot, for those who know who John Galt is. But we fashioned ourselves to be contrarian. Everybody says they're contrarian, then they stampede with the herd. No, being contrarian means you really look for the deals that are non-consensus. And if you get it right, they become a consensus deal later. There's a Wall Street understanding of this, which is a simple 2x2 matrix. So, 2x2 matrix. Used to be a consultant, I think, in 2x2 matrices. So basically the top is consensus or non-consensus, or if you like, go with the herd or be contrarian. The other two lines are, did you get it right? Did you get it wrong?
Yeah.
Now, if you get it wrong, you're dead. But
You're a bad contrarian.
A bad contrarian doesn't make any money. But if you get it right, you make more money than you would have following the herd. And the reason is, if everybody's stampeding, they chase the valuation up to a nosebleed level, 100 million or more for a pre-seed company. You've seen that all over the place. Now, it isn't that one or two may actually pay off and become an Uber. It's that as a portfolio, if you don't get the one or two and you get the 200 that don't, you're dead. Whereas if you're non-consensus, you don't chase the hot deals and pay up. You get it at a better value. You just have to be very good at picking the ones that turn into a consensus deal later. So
Yeah, I love
That's the
it.
trick. That's the
Let's
trick.
talk about Thiel for a moment. He's one of my favorite capitalists, but probably one of my least favorite socialists. And that is because for one reason, I think we're getting in a dangerous era in which like military is getting a huge technological boost, right? With Palantir and just the guy behind before you on this podcast, I think he invested in what is it? Is it Armada or like
Anduril,
no,
Luck
not
Palmer, Lucky.
Angeriel, Valerian.
Blair. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's great to make money, but I think there's a real danger of warmongers that just finance out military ventures that are less good for the world. Mostly good for America for sure, but less good for the world, right? That the world's an ecosystem. If the world goes to shit, US too. So do you think this is somewhat dangerous? It's a good business strategy for sure because patriotism in the States, it will always stay on, and people want to fight for their countries and so forth. I have various veterans on this podcast. So do you think there's a potential danger there?
Well, first of all, I grew up loving the Beatles, and John Lennon's "Imagine" is a great song, one of his
And he
best.
got shot in New York.
Yeah, he got shot in New York, one of the worst moments of my life. That and Steve Jobs dying; those were two bad moments. But
Yeah, he was a
the
legend.
thing about the song "Imagine," he was imagining a world with no borders and no religion and none of the things that create conflicts. And it's a terrific vision, but we don't live in that world.
It's like communism.
It's like, but we don't live in that world.
Yeah.
And the problem with all these utopian worlds is that they turn into dystopian very quickly with some. So
Yes.
you've seen that this pattern is so obvious. Peter Thiel's quite aware of it. The bigger issue what's going on right now is Boeing is in a world of hurt. Lockheed cannot build a fully functioning F-35. The rocket ship companies we used to use are not doing as well as SpaceX. What's the problem? The old line companies got too big and bureaucratic and too
Yeah.
focused on financial engineering. So this is the perfect venture moment to run past them, run up their tailpipe and zip by them, to use a military phrase, by investing in new entrepreneurs and new companies. Because I met Don Douglas Jr. His dad started Douglas Aircraft. I used to know some of these people that started these great companies. You go to Japan, there was a guy who started Toyota. There was a guy who started Sony, but they're now too old, and the new guard are very bureaucratic, and the entrepreneurial spirit's gone. So what US is so good at is rebirth. And what we're rebirthing is the defense industry with a whole bunch of entrepreneurial companies. And we need to do that. The war of the future is not going to be battleships and tanks and the war of the past. It's going to be drones and other crazy stuff. We need it because Boeing can't build a jet that is safely fly. It can't get a spaceship up to orbit. It's just sad
Yeah, I
what
fully
happened
agree
to
with
this
that.
company.
It's crazy, right? It's a gerontocracy, and that's the most frustrating thing to me, to probably Thiel and Musk as well. It's just somewhat dangerous as well when these people get into the government, right? And next thing you know, because we need regulations, whether we like it or not. You know, and I'm Mr. Capitalist as well, and I sort of hate regulations, but I need them. Without them, it would be a chaos. I would just take advantage of this full thing, right? So I think it's sort of dangerous when these people get at the government level and can take full control. And next thing we know, we have the real Skynet, because I don't think OpenAI will put the world in danger. I think it will save it, if anything. But I do think that these military company with AI drones are fucking dangerous.
Well, look, before you go there, I mean, I don't think we should be afraid of AI, like Skynet, because we don't mind it. It's got no mind. I mean, people have put science fiction into AI that doesn't exist in reality. And the people that are close to it pretty much agree with this. It's not that it can't be abused, but everything we build can have a good and a bad side. It's not inherently good, inherently bad. You can have nuclear energy or nuclear bombs, etc. But here's what I'm trying to really push forward. One of the books I read that I said was my favorite book right now is George Friedman's The Storm Before the Calm. He was on Tucker recently. I don't know if you ever watched Tucker, but
Sometimes.
he was very boring on Tucker, but he got some of the points out. But the book is fantastic. And the basic premise of the book is that the US agencies, there's over 400 of them, have gotten completely dysfunctional. Nothing
Yes.
can get done. They fight each other, and it's time to clean the mess up. And
Mhm.
that's what Elon has been trying to do. So when you see it that way, you could be a fan of regulation but hate the regulators. You look at how the California Coastal Commission was designed to protect beaches. They can't keep Vinod Khosla from locking his beach against the law, but they interfere in things like launches from Vanguard Air Force Base near Santa Barbara, which they had no business sticking their nose in.
Yeah, DEI got totally out of hand. That was pretty ridiculous, right? And it's just like people letting their emotions talk stronger than the numbers and the facts and the truths, and that's pretty ridiculous. I mean, your emotions are valid, right? But that doesn't mean it's
Well, it's
like the
power. It's
objective.
power. That they were seeking power. Let me explain this. I was in a venture fund before Bullpen that did Tesla and a bunch of clean tech deals. One of our clean tech deals is the infamous Ivanpah solar thermal facility up near Vegas.
Okay.
Infamous because it's now shutting down. But I remember we had the best team in the business to build a solar, mirrors in the desert. We had the best team, and they were building this thing, and they had to walk through all these California agencies. I think there are 17, but maybe the Coastal Commission didn't talk about desert stuff, so maybe 16. Each agency thought they were God, that their thinking, their issues, there you go, is that Ivanpah. They all thought you had to get by them before you could do anything. So they had to go through this incredible trial by agency to get to the point they can get enough approval to get the US government to give them some money. And it came all the way down to the wire. And so having seen that, you said, this is nonsense. Nothing can get built. These guys don't do deals with each other. They all think they are right, and so on and so forth. I can give you other stories, but you see, when I read Friedman's book, he figured this out. He captured this. The agencies have got to be constrained because the power hungry side of them has gotten out of control.
Yeah, I think that generally speaking, people that emerge from social science, including politicians, they need to be more business, and business people being a bit more social. Let's call it 90% capitalist, 10% social, because I think capitalism is very good in the end. I think social people aren't adapting, right? They just thrive off conventions, power, vanity, most of them. And I think, yeah, they need to be more business oriented, have clear objectives, being business savvy, right? I believe everyone in the end should sort of become entrepreneurs. But yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, I think you're right. I think the issue, though, is this conflict between sort of the free market capitalist side and the bureaucratic, regulatory, socialist side has been going on at least for 5,000 years. You go
Hmm.
back and read like Roman history, you find that Caesar was on the populare side and he was opposed by Cato, who's a optimate, the best people. And it's the same conflict, just in a different context. So
Hmm.
you have to accept that this conflict is going to be with us forever. This is deep in human nature.
Until AI merges with us.
Well, let's talk about AI. I think if AI were to emerge with an intelligent AI and we're somehow given control, it wouldn't do Skynet. It would basically stop progress. I think we'd end
Why?
up in a great stasis. It's just because how AI, to the AI, progress is not what they do. They don't come up with new ideas, new inventions. They're not entrepreneurial. That's not what they do. They look back and they come up with an answer or an idea.
Well, I think agentic's about to change that, and since AIs are or creations, ambition's going to be injected into them, and survivalism and so forth. And the only way I could see your thesis working is if AI is like, yeah, fuck this, progress is equal my debt and your debt, so I'm just bouncing out of here and I'm shutting down your
Well,
system, right?
yeah, I think it's because it's a machine and a machine thinks a machine way, not a people way. So to a machine, you could say, get ambitious, go invent an iPhone. There's no way they would have invented an iPhone. Challenge any AI to put all that together.
Yeah,
So,
I think they could conceptually, right? If you're referring to it creating it robotically, I think we need to wait another
I
couple
mean,
of
coming
decades.
up with the idea and the concept and putting it together
I
like
think it
this.
could come up with pretty decent concepts that even your brain and my brain cannot think of. A technology that is not necessarily a phone, right? It may be a hybrid between VR or Neuralink. Obviously, it's not super novel, right? But it's more novel than most human minds. You'd agree to that?
Well, what we're going to find out, I guess. I do think we are going to achieve. I don't think an AI will be quote unquote conscious, but I think it could achieve AGI and maybe very close, which is it can outreason and outsmart people. I think we're very close to that.
Yeah,
And
consciousness is such an interesting biochemical phenomenon that's wired for our own survival. I think AGI can certainly fake consciousness at that level. It
yes,
can imitate, and we humans imitate pretty much all the time. Even the way I talk right now is imitating 1,000, if not 10,000, of my favorite people. So, but yeah, I think the agentic age is gonna wreck shit up in the economy. This is really scary. I do think it's gonna slash a bunch of jobs in the next couple of years because it's literally gonna be a Charles that is 1,000 times faster, 1,000 times more productive, learns 1,000 times faster, and memorizes pretty much everything. So, and I will have control over it, right? And there will be laws also. So not only human conventions, but laws restraining what I can do, what I cannot do, but people will break these laws, right? And the economy is sort of free flowing. It's not really restrained by laws. It is in some sense, but I do think it's going to replace a bunch of people. I had a VA guy yesterday on my podcast, runs a VA business. I was like, how is that going to survive? You know, if VAs are totally useless. I mean, I fired my last 250 employees 2 years ago, and since then I've only been running on AIs. I think I'm in the future, but I think most business owners are also going to do that in a couple of years.
you know the Luddite story, I assume.
Yeah,
The
yeah, I've heard
Luddites.
it various times on this podcast.
Yeah, then the thing about Luddites is they were right. They lost their jobs. And they weren't asking for their job, they're asking for some compensation, unemployment insurance, so to speak. But people looking back 30 years later, there were, many, many 10 times the jobs, new jobs than the ones lost. And it's always happened with technology. So to worry about AI the way you are, I know a lot of people do, you'd have to believe that the Luddite fallacy finally works and there's no jobs to replace the jobs. But look, let me give you an example.
But a tractor is not an AI. You know, an AI has, and it's about to have full agency, and it's a brain. Literally, it's another human, but better.
Well,
That's
look, I think most American global companies in a bunch of years will have more agents than people inside of it. But it doesn't mean there's not new jobs created. I mean, let's take an example. Robotic factories building iPhones in the US, which doesn't seem plausible, but maybe it is. Or building something. Um, Usually people figure out that every manufacturing job creates 7 other jobs downstream or around it.
Mhm.
And even in a robotic factory, you need engineers and other people to sit on top of the robots, the agents, so to speak.
Mhm.
And so you could say that each agentic robotic factory is going to create 6.5 new jobs, you know.
Factories, yeah, but like online, me as an online worker, knowledge
Sure.
worker, like I could just have an agent checking what I'm doing on my browser, reproduce it, and there would be zero reason why I, a business owner that used to manage 2,000 employees in the last decade, would hire someone at 10, 15, 20, $25 an hour when this agent costs me literally cents on
No, I
the
agree
hour.
with you. I agree with you. I think there's going to be massive white collar jobs that go away, but a lot of the jobs that are likely to go away are what I call high toil. Like you're a legal researcher, you got to look in dusty books and, it's fucking boring.
It's
That type
crazy.
of job goes away. Or maybe you're a tech guy, waiting for log files to come in or alerts to go fix something in the mainframe or whatever, or the server farm. That's a boring job. That's better done by some robot. There's a
Yeah,
lot of those type of jobs that should be replaced and go to some machine that doesn't get bored.
but even you
So,
and I, we're very smart people, and I'm not sure about you, but on a daily basis, I'm like, oh, I feel productive. You know, I responded to 100 leads, and yeah, that's cash in my pipe for sure. But can an AI do this? Well, yeah, it
oh
can
yeah,
do it
yeah,
in like a minute, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
took
no
me like
question.
literally an hour
Sales,
to do it.
yeah, in the future there'll be product-led sales in a lot of tech companies and agents and bots. There won't be a lot of salespeople. I agree.
Yeah, so I think in the end, everyone's gonna become entrepreneur. That's the only solution I can see to that problem, and that doesn't mean everyone's gonna survive and thrive. I think UBI is gonna kick in pretty quick, and I think us smart one percenters, let's call it that way, we will manage an army of AI, and we will be orchestrators. We will be like, okay, this department and these agents are doing well. Am I buying more of these agents? Am I prompting them in a different way? How can I connect them with my whole agent ecosystem? So I think this full business building philosophy will change.
Well, look, I know people have that point of view that 1% will control a bunch of agents. Everybody else has got to be put in the dole or they'll have no job. I don't buy it at all. I think there'll actually be a lot more jobs created. They're going to be a higher level of work than the high toil jobs. And so the bigger issue to me is the complete mismatch in our workforce to the future. We already have a mismatch with a lot of engineering type of jobs that just don't get filled, that could. Manufacturing jobs, it's not the people working on an assembly line, it's the engineers, people running it, doing creative things on top. But we lack people with the skills to do it. So if you imagine a great washing out of the boring part of the white collar workforce, if those people majored in some wrong major and have no real technical or higher level of creativity to them, they'll have a hard time getting employed. That I agree with. But that's a mismatch of the colleges and the trade schools to the future jobs.
And that's
We've
where
got to
agents are
fix
going to
that.
fill these. That's
Well,
where
we've got to
agents
fix
are.
that. Yeah, the agents will fill those jobs, but the people need to get retooled
Oh,
or
yeah.
to rethink what they do.
Yeah, shameless plug to my CEO uni school. So we teach kids AI
That's good.
and how to not go to college and waste their time and start a company at 7 years old. So Duncan, where can people find out more info about you?
Well, I suppose LinkedIn, if you want. My years ago when I did AOL email, I only could use 10 characters, so I did Duncan Davi, all one. That
Duncan
became
Davy.
my LinkedIn thing, my Twitter thing. It's a thing everywhere. If you want to find
Okay.
me, at Duncan Davy.
So
That's
that
easy.
was Duncan